Incorporated. At CompuMatter, I'm the manager down here, Douglas. We have been running this store for about 20 years now, and collectively we have a lot of experience in technical issues that you can have. And what these are aimed to do is just to help people guide around different computer issues and common computer questions. But we're going to keep it completely random, so we're going to go through a bunch of different subjects, and if you feel the need to ask a question, feel free to leave a comment. It's live, and we'll get it, and we can go off of whatever questions you have or anything you're interested about hearing about. And
my name is Jay. I am the owner of CompuMatter, and been at this game since the 1990s. A lot of expertise in programming and website development and building servers and fixing computers and all the things that comes with being around for 20 years. So if you want to know anything about that, throw it my way. Auren?
My name is Auren. I've been here for, I think, 2 years now.
2 years now.
And I'm the on-site technician. I also help out with repairs and a little bit of everything here, marketing, and then some one-on-one trainings. And I also wanted to touch up on if you do have any questions and you happen to miss the live stream, we don't mind if you leave a comment. We'd be happy to check in next time whenever we're able to do a live and touch on any questions you may have.
that's true. We can't carry over to the next episode if you're curious about something. Otherwise, do we have a starting place for this one?
Well, we could definitely start here with what's the difference between memory and storage.
Yeah, RAM and memory. You want to start off with that one?
I could. I do want to check to make sure we're doing okay on our stream though, real quick.
Make sure we got audio.
Before we get into it.
Yeah.
We're doing a quick test. If anybody sees us and would drop a little line in the chat messenger area to let us know that you do see us, that the audio sounds good, anything like that is helpful.
Translated 6, but we'll have to change that later.
Okay, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
working. I got audio over here
All
as well.
right. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the difference between
the other one.
RAM or memory, which you see those two words interchangeably used. It is actually different from what you would call your typical computer storage, where you might keep your documents and photographs on. So when you're going to get a new machine, or if you're even looking to
And it's on that camera.
oh, thank you. If you're looking to upgrade your current machine, you might wonder, why is my computer so slow? What can I do to improve it? In some cases, if you have a conventional hard drive, upgrading to a solid state is going to be the answer over RAM the majority of the time. But RAM and or memory, it's something that typically 8 gigabytes is a good amount these days for what most people do, documents, email, browsing. And then we kind of think of it like, how many employees do you have working on a task? The less that you have, the more difficult it is to have a bunch of different browser tabs open or applications running at the same time. So if you use your computer for a lot of different things all at the same time, switching between tabs and just kind of multitasking, you might want to get more than 8 gigabytes of RAM depending on your use case, especially if you start getting into gaming and video editing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and on video gaming, I think I run with, I think we talked about it in one of the other episodes, is 32 gigs of RAM. I think it's between 16 and 32, depending on what you're doing. If you're getting into music development, some video editing, and on the video game side, between there is a good number.
I think when you your first opener was, what's the difference between memory and storage?
Yeah.
And I think the fact is, when you shut your computer off, anything that you have in memory or RAM is gone.
Yeah, good
It doesn't
point.
exist anymore. Anything you have in storage is still there, and that's a primary difference. So memory is responsible for carrying out tasks. Storage is responsible for giving the things that you create a place to live. And they're often used interchangeably. Memory, how much memory do I have? People think that's how many pictures and how many documents they can store. It really isn't. Memory and RAM are in fact used interchangeably, and that equates into thinking power. And as Auren pointed out, if you had employees, if 4 gigs of memory represented 1 employee, well, you're giving that employee things to do. And if they run out, once they've got so much that they can't do anymore, they start carrying out those tasks. If you had another employee, well, that would be like having now 8 gigs of memory, or another employee, 12 gigs of memory, and you could get a lot more done because when those employees are full of themselves, no, not meaning full of themselves, but full of no more, they can't do anymore. In the computer world, they basically, that's like they give you an hourglass to look at and say, okay, go ahead and look at this hourglass. I'll be right back going to do the things you want to do. But if you have 8 gigs or 12 gigs or 16 gigs or 32 gigs, you'll see a lot less of that hourglass because you can always hand it off to the next stick of memory.
And of course, on the Apple side, that'd be the spinning beach ball instead of the hourglass. They give you something a little more colorful.
Yeah,
True.
that is nice. Yeah.
But aside from that, RAM stands for random access memory. It does store some memory on it, but it has to do with multitasking. So when you open a program, it's saving the state of that program so that you can open up other programs and do other things. And when you go back to it, it's exactly how it was. And then once you open too many programs, then you get that lag of you're running out of resources to handle that many tasks at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I would say browsers and Discord and things like that are notorious for taking up a lot of system RAM. So if you do notice a lot of slowness, those are 2 places to check if you use either of those. Well, most everybody uses browsers, but...
And we've talked about just for speed is turning off things in the background. You can go into the task manager and see every process that's running on your computer, and a lot of times you can see what's eating your memory in that case as well. As well as removing and uninstalling programs you don't use. That all whittles away at things that are accessing your RAM in the background without you knowing.
Should we show them on the screen how much memory is being taken by this particular computer?
Yeah.
Just so they can see that?
Let's do it.
Well, why don't you put ourselves in the lower right
Yeah,
corner?
let's do
There
that
we go. We'll use that. Yeah. This is a new feature throwing us in the lower right-hand corner. And we're going to open up Task Manager, which, by the way, we use the hotkey Control-Alt-Delete and chose Task Manager.
We did Control-Shift-Escape, and that automatically just opens the Task Manager. But Control-Alt-Delete
better yet. Take a step out.
Yeah, Control-Shift-Escape will take you right there. And then you have performance and processes. In processes, I'm used to seeing the percentage up here, but I guess the window is just
It should
too
be in
small
performance.
There we go.
There we go.
No, it is here. It was just the window so small.
Okay.
So up here you can see your memory, and it's 10%. And if I click on it, it'll actually show me what's eating the most of that resources is Google Chrome.
Yeah.
And so let's say I was doing something and I wasn't utilizing Chrome at all, I'd be wanting to eliminate that so that I can have freed up memory. Of course, 10% isn't that much.
So in this computer, my computer, we're only using 10% of the memory available to the entire system.
Which is?
128 gigs.
Yeah. So no wonder it's 10%.
What does performance show us?
Performance shows me the memory. So if I go into the memory, that's my 10%. And it's using...
Yeah, there's some numbers there. So you can see I've got 115 gigabytes of memory available. And to the left of that, I'm using 12.9 gigs.
Okay, there it is.
So there's some stats there if you click on the memory tab. Now this is Windows. Of course, Apple's got its own way of maybe deciphering these same things.
It's called Activity Monitor, and it has a similar tab set up at the top that you can click on CPU, memory, energy, those sort of things, and it'll give you the same sort of information.
But if you were using, if you found that you were regularly using 80 or 90% of the memory in your computer, in some cases people are using 100% all the time, and they don't realize it because they don't know that they can go to a place like this and actually see the numbers. It's like getting blood work done at the hospital. You don't realize, we don't know what's going on inside, but there are ways of analyzing these things.
No.
Yeah, and then, there's also the tendency for people to just assume that is how their system is and accept it and just have a slow computer and just wait for it, go get a cup of coffee while it starts up. They don't know that the same piece of hardware can function a lot better with a little bit of care and disabling things in the background. Yeah. And you can also, in fact, have one program, if it's corrupted and not running correctly, it can cause it to spike the RAM or spike the disk usage to 100%. And you could be sitting there using a computer that's slow as molasses every day and not know that some program you don't even use anymore is stealing all of your system's power.
All right.
Yeah.
And you can usually see that in Task Manager.
That's a good thing to note on because you can see what software is using up your CPU, your memory, or your storage.
Yeah, it's nice to know who the culprit is.
Exactly. So that helps if you're running into weird sudden spikes of slowness. That's a good way to check for it too.
And sometimes it's good to just, if you're seeing those memory use and it's sustaining itself and you can't figure out how to beat it, reboot the computer, start from scratch, and take a look at the numbers. And then you might see something building from a normal 10% or 20%. You might notice a particular program rising in the numbers above all the rest.
That actually is a good point I have some programs that have broken and had update issues, and it sits there and runs perfectly fine, and then every now and then it runs some sort of process to do an update, and that update is totally broken. So it'll jump to 100% until its fail timer goes off, and then it goes back down to running normally. And so if you got to watch it a little bit longer in order to find those sort of mistakes, but that happens as well.
I would say I would like to be an ideal situation for anybody. Do I need more memory or not? Is I think most of the time you should be, you need to be running at 60% or under feels comfortable for me. If we're only at 10% right now, so it's a no-brainer.
No
but as
problem.
long as I'm not pushing over 60% on a regular basis, I wouldn't worry about the amount of memory that you have. And if you're pushing over 80, 90% on a regular basis, then you can be sure when you're not looking, you're hitting 100, and you should probably think about upgrading that memory.
How about you? Do you watch over any of that?
Did I watch?
Degree? Do you watch over any of that to that degree?
I mean, in my own
your own personal system,
yeah, it depends on what I'm experiencing. If I have a certain stutter in a game, I want to know what exactly might be causing that, what's maxing out. So it just depends. If I don't have any issues, I don't tend to watch it though.
Yeah, right. No, and then I have a bunch of friends that are frame rate and FPS players, and they like to have the fastest amount of reaction time as possible. So they will watch it and see what programs are causing a problem just so they can get 1 millisecond ahead of the competition.
Can't say I'm that intense about it.
And that brings up the speed of the memory. So, just like some employees are faster than others, right? Some runners are faster than others. Memory chips, some are faster than others. So you can have the same computer and say I want 8 gigs of memory, but you can buy 8 gigs of memory that are at a faster speed. They measure it in megahertz, and so that would make that would make them carry out the task more quickly, and ultimately, as a result, need less memory to accomplish the same goal because they're faster at what they do. And motherboards, your computer will dictate both how much memory you're allowed to have and how fast that memory can be. So there are restrictions. Cheap, $400 brand new computers are going to have very low amount of memory that you're allowed to have, and that memory is going to be very low speed, where your higher performance gaming class computers and all that will allow you to have tons of memory and really fast memory as well.
Yeah, and that's a common...
You pay for that.
There's a common confusion with a lot of customers when they come in here, is they're buying a new machine and they have an old machine that has 8 gigs of RAM in it per se, and they want more. They assume because it's a newer computer that I should have more than what I'm coming from. And on the speed of the RAM is a really important one, but as the generations get better in the technology, so the different types of RAM that you have going through the years, you could have 8 gigs of RAM in both systems, and the 8 gigs of RAM is going to be double the speed if it's 2 or 3 years ahead of the other.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to wrap their heads around that. It's the same with the Intel processors, is they have the i3, i5, i7, and i9, but they make those same CPUs every year. So they're still the same ones that you're saying, they're just a different generation number that comes after them.
Yeah. So our last thing I want to add on that is, it's really, we've kind of stumbled on, how do you know when you need a new computer?
Yeah.
So this, you don't really need a new computer just because a new computer came out on the scene. But if learning what you've seen here today, if you can see that you are regularly hitting 80+% of the amount of memory that your computer has in it, you're using a lot of RAM with the different programs and things that you're doing, and you've called CompuMatter, or you've come to the store, or you've learned on your own that you have the maximum amount of memory that your computer allows you to have, 8 gigs, 16 gigs, or whatever. Well, you can't upgrade it anymore. You're done. So you have to live with the reality that your machine is taxing, is going slow because it doesn't have enough memory, and that's the result of not having enough memory.
Yeah.
Is your machine has to wait until that employee comes back from doing whatever they're doing, because there is no more employees to hand it off to. And so at that point, it's time to upgrade to a new computer or figure out what the hell is taking up all that memory. So you could have an antivirus program running in the background that's a pig, and it's just gobbling up all the memory your system has, and the solution might be to get rid of that antivirus program. Or it just depends. There's some other scenarios there, but this is how you can quantify that.
Yeah, if your computer's supported, then Windows has its own built-in antivirus, as well as antivirus. If something is broken in the machine and causing slowness, antivirus is actually my first go-to to disable or turn off or uninstall.
Third-party antivirus.
Yeah, third-party antivirus in order to test an environment. So I've seen them cause Wi-Fi issues and get really slow.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, you're getting a bunch of pop-ups from a lot of them. Like, I worked on someone's machine a little bit ago that had Norton, and I think I must have gotten 5 or 6 different pop-ups working on it for a half hour, which just seems a little bit overkill, especially if you're just trying to stay focused on a task and you're getting a pop-up in the corner saying, hey, your privacy might be at risk. You should click this and download our software to do this. And
right.
Yeah, a lot of the third-party ones have a bunch of features and a bunch of extra software that they try to get you to install. And before you know it, you do have 5 or 6 of their different softwares running in the background, all taking resources.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and it's easy to get scared and think that you just need all of them, but a lot of the times you just need the protection, the live protection, and then you're not wasting as many resources on other features you're not using.
Yeah. Being armed with the knowledge of navigating the internet safely, too, can also just make things a lot faster. You don't have to run a bunch of things in the background to help protect you as much with that sort of knowledge.
Yeah, and we went over in one of the last episodes of installing Linux is a solution for a lot of people on slower machines. It is another thing you can do before going out and buying a new machine. But yes, if you're using all your system's resources and you're at your max for RAM, or you're at your max for how many CPUs you can upgrade, or whether you can at all, then that'll be the determining factor in your scenario on whether you want to go to a new machine or not. And then if you do, that's one of the things we handle down here a lot of, is building computers, especially on the custom side, so that they have some upgradability, because different CPUs go with different socket types on motherboards, and so you can get a CPU that's able to upgrade to the next couple generation CPUs, whereas if you get a certain kind, it could be the end all, and you can only upgrade it to that generation.
All right. Another thing I wanted to touch on was going back to memory again. A lot of people, when they're going to look for a new machine, they don't realize that they might not be able to upgrade that RAM in the future. So you might spend a little bit less now based on the amount of software you're currently using, but maybe in the future you might want to do some more advanced video editing. What you might not realize is a lot of memory nowadays, especially in Apple machines, are actually soldered to the motherboard. So I'd recommend being extra cautious. Make sure what it is that you actually need in the future too is, if it is soldered, make sure you get the right amount of memory for the foreseeable future rather than what you need right now, because otherwise you might have to buy a whole new machine. Right. Or just not use the program that you want to use.
Yeah, kind of like buying a house when you know you're going to have children. It's like,
yeah, right.
Don't buy a one-bedroom home when you know you're going to be having a family. You got to.
That actually touches on a really important note for a lot of people. Is there's a lot of people, especially in the Mac world. I won't focus just on the Mac world, but there's a lot of people who have important data they're storing on a machine, and they did not do the research when they were buying it on whether it has a soldered storage drive. So she talked about the RAM or the memory not being able to be upgraded because it's soldered to the board. It is so much more of a nightmare if your main storage is soldered to the board. That's basically your hard drive, or where you store all your personal data, is a part of the motherboard. And why that can get so ugly is because of the fact that if something becomes corrupted to the point where you can't software repair it, your data is now trapped inside of a motherboard, where normally you can take out the hard drive, plug it into something else, and run stuff on it. If it's soldered to the board, then it's just a couple chips on the board, and there's nothing you can do about it. I've seen a lot of people lose data that way, and so I've chosen, and we've chosen for CompuMatter, to try to avoid any systems that have built-in memory. They can run a little bit faster because it is a part of the motherboard, so it is more integrated than a separate part, but it's so much more dangerous when it comes to storing information.
Yeah, the Surface tablet and Apple products come to mind with models of products where they're going to this thing where they're soldering it to the motherboard, preventing you from being able to just go to a computer shop and getting it upgraded, which ultimately forces you to buy a new computer. So I like to stay away from those. This is an example of an SSD hard drive. It's 2.5 inches by 4 inches or whatever. Another one is a little chip over there. They make them hard drives that are SSD chips. And basically, you need a new one. You've got connectors right on the back here. Pull that out of the computer, plug in a bigger one, and Bob's your uncle.
We can run data recovery on that, so if for some reason nothing's readable, your machine doesn't boot, there's data recovery efforts we can go out of, which is basically your last grab of any of the data, even if it's been deleted. The recovery is able to.
Yeah, I can take this, stick it into a different computer using data recovery software. I can put a brand new one of these in your new computer and send you home, so you're at least able to use your computer while I continue to try to do data recovery on this. If it's soldered to the motherboard, there's no way to do that. Your computer has to be here.
There's probably somebody out there that's got the know-how and the technology to be able to press the two teeth together and read some information. There's got to be somebody out there. But as far as the most case scenario, nobody's going to have access to any of that. And I imagine it would be up in the thousands of dollars, so that data better be really, really worth it.
Yeah.
All right.
Otherwise, if you're buying a new machine or if you're getting a machine from us, that'll be something that we warn you about. And Apple did it for a number of their systems, and I think they're going away from that, but I'm not sure. And then I believe the Surface had like 3 or 4 years where they soldered the chip to the board, and now they're coming back to realizing that was a terrible idea.
Yeah, I've seen the panel on the back of the Surfaces on some of the newer models where you can actually lift it up and then just pull it out and plug it into another machine.
Some manufacturers are nicer than others on how well they allow you to get to the components in the system.
So the moral of the story is, if you've got a choice, don't get memory and drives that are soldered to the board. Make sure that they're unpluggable or portable. You can ask your salesperson that when you're buying a computer. It'll be an unusual question for them, but it has a value.
Yeah, it'll show you know a little bit more than the average customer. Aside from that, that's something that we look for when we get any of our refurbished systems, is we'll not only look for the removable drive and the removable RAM, but we also look for computers that are built around being able to upgrade them more smoothly. Because there's a lot of ways you can seal all the components up into a system to make it so complex to repair Apple computers, so that it's just better to buy a new one than it is to get the parts replaced. And so we try to avoid that on the purchasing end before it even gets out to the public.
Yeah.
All right, another subject?
Yeah.
We've got a piece of paper here. We're going to kind of go down the subject list. And
unless you want to chime in.
If anybody chimes in with a specific question that can be completely off topic, though related to computers. Well, for the most part. I mean, you can take a shot at it. We'll make that decision when we see the question.
All right, let's go with not having any sound. That's a common one. We haven't touched on that.
Should we all go silent? Make them check their sound.
Make them check their settings.
All right, good luck.
We'll keep moving our mouths and make them think, right? Force them to check their volume.
No, what was the first thing you would do?
If I had no sound, the first thing I would do is check my volume. If I'm watching a YouTube video, for instance, check the volume in YouTube, check the volume in my PC, make sure they're both up where they need to be.
And then check the volume on your speakers.
Number one. Oh, and if the speaker has a volume control, yes, check that as well. And if all three of those are good and I still have no sound, that's where the fun begins.
No.
Yeah.
How about you? What would be your first go-to?
Also that, because I am guilty of accidentally somehow muting YouTube when I'm using it, and I'm like, hold on, and then I'm able to find the bar, and then that's usually the majority of the problems.
And on that note, it's just the M key to mute when you're on YouTube,
Yep.
so it is easy to do.
Oh, another hotkey. All right.
The second thing I do is, because I have 3 different audio outputs on my personal computer, I go down to the volume mixer. I'm using a Windows machine. And I click on the little speaker icon there at the bottom right, And then it actually gives me the option to switch between the different outputs there. So I have one for my headphones if I have those plugged in. I have one for, I have this audio transmitter that goes between my computer and my TV, and then the main speakers. So sometimes I find, oh, my audio isn't working. Oh, thank you. I was used to sitting in the middle last time.
We're training her to look at the middle. We all got to look at our own individual cameras
I get
here.
into what I'm saying.
And we're looking at the center camera.
All right, there we go. Hello. So, so sometimes I get into doing something, maybe a game, maybe watching a video. I'm like, I don't have any sound. The second thing I do after checking the volume is clicking on that volume mixer there at the bottom right and making sure I have the right sound output device selected. If I want to use my headphones, I'd make sure the headphones are selected. If I want to use the speakers and so on. So just make sure whatever output device you have is correctly selected in that. That'd be the second thing.
Yeah, that's good. I'd say you covered most of the things that you have to do for that sort of thing. I have had occasions on the more complicated side that if you have a program that's open and it is not smart enough to realize you have changed your audio output, closing that program and reopening it has solved some problems on when I was working with music and input-output devices.
Right. Yeah.
The program has locked in whatever settings I opened it with, and I actually have to close the program and reopen it. I would say that's a poorly made program flaw, but it happens a lot.
I'd like to touch base on the recording of sound for just a moment. I do a lot of multimedia stuff, and early in the game, it's like when I'm recording something, I'm recording myself or whatever, how do I know what volume that I'm recording is a volume that's going to come out properly on the public's playing devices? And the way that I have accomplished that is to make sure that the finished product, and if a person has their volume on their computer, their whatever phone or whatever, they should be able to hear you clearly at their 50% volume. So whatever you're creating, you want to test your own recording so that the playback comes out normal at their 50%.
Yeah,
That's
good
a
advice.
point. Yeah. All right, and I guess for not having any audio aside from checking the source, whatever you're plugged in, whether it's the headphones. I know there's some gaming headsets that have the volume on the side and a mute button on the wire. So there's a couple different places that the device themselves could be muted. So I'd say the main three are the device physically, your outputs in the bottom right-hand corner for Windows, and then for Mac, it's up by the little speaker in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And then whatever program you're using sometimes has its own volume. YouTube specifically would be your third.
Yeah,
One more troubleshooting thing I'd recommend doing. If you've done all of the above and none of it's working, I'd also be sure to check your connections, wire connections, unplug and replug in. And then if that still fails, even rebooting your computer, sometimes I've seen if you run into a real severe audio bug, it can help as well.
okay,
So
we have
turn it off and turn it back on again.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll hear many times in the tech world. It's before you go too far.
we have a message here from
Hi, Amanda.
Amanda Luke.
Hey. What about video and visual? Okay, so for Zoom, I know a lot of them use a little picture of a camera, but look out for a little picture of a camera with a red line through it. Sometimes you can start up a Zoom meeting and not notice that your camera is actually disabled in the meeting, and those can be in various places for different programs. I don't know how I would do it for all programs, but she mentioned Zoom specifically. I believe it's just down at the bottom row, and that's the same with the little mic image. So for the video and visual side, a little camera with a red line, and then a little microphone with a red line through it will tell you that you're not connected there.
Muted.
Do you have a thought on Zoom?
Yeah, I'd say another thing, I guess, on Zoom, I believe both for the microphone and for the video camera itself, there's, I think, a little up arrow next to that box. So if for some reason, if you've already clicked on that and there's no red line, try clicking on that little up arrow and see if the correct output or input device, as the video camera would be, is selected. Because if you have multiple for some reason, or if for whatever reason, if the other one that you use is not selected, that could cause you some issues too.
Yeah, I find in Zoom, if another application will often rob the camera from you. So you've got to be careful with that. When you open up Zoom, you click on the gear icon in Zoom to go to settings, and you've got an option for audio, video, and that kind of stuff. You click on video, it says it can't get to your camera. You know the camera's there. You physically turned the camera on, or maybe it's a built-in webcam, and you've just used it previously that day or whenever. Sometimes your browser or some other application that you've used the camera in without realizing it can be taking that camera up and making it unavailable to Zoom.
Yeah, and the arrow's a good one, because a lot of times you'll have somebody that has another microphone on something and they need to switch it over to the camera.
Yeah.
Another one with camera not working is an oddly common one is a lot of the laptops are being built in with the little sliders that go over the camera,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
people aren't aware that those are open. So before you troubleshoot everything, check to see if you have some sort of privacy shield over top of the camera to flip on and off.
Yeah, yeah, good one.
Yeah, a little plastic piece. I also want to touch on the all-in-one systems too, because they're starting to make those where you actually have a little push button on the top that pops out your webcam rather than it just being right on the top of your screen anymore. They made those, I think, for privacy as well. So sometimes people buy a machine and they don't realize, they just see it says webcam and they say it's not working, but they don't actually know they have a little hidden panel there on the top that they can slide open and get to the camera.
Right. Okay, thank you for that question, Amanda.
Yeah,
I think
good question.
that's a good one for a lot of people.
What else we got?
What do we go on next? I was going to think of a random one if I had one. Otherwise, let's go with can't open files. And that could be a lot of different things. But if you're having problems opening a file, what would be the first thing you do if you couldn't open a file?
Well, I'd read the error message because that's pretty telling of why something might not be working. So if it says, if I double click on, say, a Word document, and it says cannot find application to use and comes up with a list of different things I can click on, like LibreOffice and Word and things like that, at that point, what that's telling me is that it doesn't know which program it actually wants me to open it in. So it's giving me the option to choose out of the list which application I want to open it, and then I can choose always open with this one or just open it once, and then from there it should let you actually open up that file.
And that's on the Windows side for the specific. It'll ask you which one you want to open it as, and you can choose other programs. And there's usually a checkbox for always, and there might be a checkbox when you hit always, so that it never asks you again for that program. How about you?
So the goal is what to open a file with?
No, when you can't open a file.
When you can't open, if you double click on the file and nothing happens?
Like this
Yeah.
talks about,
Yeah.
what she brought up is called file association, and it's basically the file is not associated with any other program, so it doesn't know what to do with it. But I went a little more vague on what would you do if you just couldn't open a file.
The first thing I would personally want to do is make sure that my extensions were turned on so I'd know what kind of file it was, and make sure I open it with the right program.
And how would you do that?
So by default, maybe you can address Apple, or maybe Apple comes with extensions enabled. But with Windows, out of the box, you can't see extensions. You can't see that it's a .pdf or a .doc or a .jpeg or whatever. And we want to make sure that you've got that right. So click View. If you hit your alternate key, you'll notice a series of menus that show up at the top of File Explorer. And you'll want to choose, I think it's View and then extensions, file extensions. And once you've chosen, there I am.
Yeah, there's a
We could
and then-
show them too.
and
yeah,
then-
that's what I was thinking.
Then there we got.
But I didn't expect it to show you twice.
we got
Let's go
we got
center
the whole.
alt talent, and then let's do that.
There we are.
All right, so
You want to go ahead and show that?
yeah. So hold on a second. Get that out of the way for a second. I've got to get rid of that. Okay, a lot of pressure here. Okay, so here we are in File Explorer. Okay, if I hit, actually I don't even need to hit the alternate key. It depends on the version of Windows you have. But here we have View.
I mean, I would have went right click, just because that's something everybody on the Windows side is going to be able to do.
Right click. What do you mean right click?
Right click on a file and choose properties.
No, I don't want to choose properties.
Oh.
I want to choose this menu right here that says View. That's the
Okay.
goal. And then in View, you see an option for file extensions. Okay, and so if you'll notice this PSD file right here, which is a Photoshop file, if I click the File Name Extensions button, you can no longer see the extension. By clicking it, I know that PSD means it's a Photoshop file. So that gives me a hint as to what I'm supposed to open it with,
All
right? Now, knowing what kind of file it is, I can right-click on the file. We'll take this image, for instance. Let's say I couldn't open that file. I double-click on it, nothing happened. I'm now going to right-click on it, choose Open With, which shows up in that menu. I can pick a program, but since I know it's not working, I want to choose another app, and I want to click this button that says always use this app to open ping files, because what that'll do, it will force it from this point forward to do the right thing.
Just make sure you have the right program.
Right, and I'll pick a program, pick for instance. I could pick a browser, I could pick anything that I know will open up a program. Click OK. It'll use that program, pick in this case, which by the way is a great free image opener and editor, PICK, and there it is. And with that program, I can draw pictures, I can crop that, and I'll do all kinds of wonderful things.
All right, mind if I show the other way?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way I was going to bring up is in the Mac side, you hold down the Control key and click on it, and then you can go to Get Info, and that'll show you the file extension and other things like that. But on the Windows side, since we're here and I can visually show it, it's right-click and go down to Properties. And Properties is going to show you what the file extension is right at the end of the name of the file. And if you're confused on what that file extension is and what the heck opens it up, you can always Google this. So just Google dot whatever the ending of it is and what program opens it. And if you don't have that program, there's sometimes conversion options out there, and you can convert the file to whatever you need to be able to open it.
Right, so that'd be good for an individual file, and then the View menu will make sure that every file is visible.
So Properties, find out what it is, Open With, and then you can choose it to always open with that file.
Got it.
Yeah, I believe in Windows 11 you actually have more of a toolbar menu up there at the top, and then there's just a View button that you click on, and rather than it being a whole tab, it gives you just a row of different things. And the Show More area also lets you check that same box, the file extension, so that you can see file extensions on Windows 11 as well.
Got it.
All right. So we got video, audio problems for common ones and how to troubleshoot that.
Right.
Is there anything else that would be a normal going to troubleshoot? The video calling is a really common one, but there's so many different programs. Ultimately for Zoom, because it is a really popular one, I will go back to, you brought up the settings. If you click on the gear and you go to settings, there is video and audio settings. You can literally see what your camera is going to be seeing. If you don't see anything in that window in the settings, your camera is not connected to that program. And same with the mic, they have a little test button and you can test how loud you are and change the volume accordingly to make sure that people can hear you. But you can test it out before you get into the meeting. So if somebody says they can't hear you and you've already tested it, then you know there's some sort of mute function going on since you've checked the audio.
Yeah, it's a good thing to check. Microphones too, if the microphone stopped working, what would be the first thing you'd try?
The microphone goes to the same thing. Most microphones have a button on them for muting, so that's always my first check. And then aside from that, it's usually within the program itself, going to settings and seeing if your gain is maybe turned up or too low, and the volume there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you put a sign on the door or no?
No, I did not.
Okay, that's fine. You want to go on to the fact of the day?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to break it down, but before we do, we're going to part with a fact of the day.
All right. So.
And Auren is going to present this.
The first person to drink cow's milk was very thirsty.
That was not the quote I had prepared, but good one.
Go for it.
So the QWERTY keyboard layout was designed in the 1870s by Christopher Sholes, who invented the typewriter. The layout was created to prevent typewriters from jamming by placing commonly used letters apart from each other, which is something I didn't know until I looked into some
I
things.
didn't quite understand that. So
The typewriter itself was built so that if you're using the typewriter, they didn't want to put all the common vowels together or letters that you use most commonly, because if you were typing too close to each other, the keys could potentially stick more often.
It was the metal bars on the typewriter that are slamming down next to each other.
Yeah.
So if all the vowels were right here and you were hitting them right after another, you could get them to cross over. And
Right.
when was the last time you used a
That
typewriter?
makes sense. So the keyboard, the QWERTY
Yep.
layout, which it comes from a typewriter, not a computer,
Right, and people just kept it.
was designed in such a way to ensure that the bars didn't congregate and cause it to stick.
And then I'm guessing it just became a winner because at that point so many people were well versed and trained with that layout that, that when they were going to switch over to a computer, they were like, you better not change that. I just spent my entire life learning how to do that really fast, and you're going to change it so that it's in a different order.
That's an interesting fact. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Because, I mean, everybody uses it every day, but I never knew. I mean, why does it start with a Q?
Right.
So, yeah. It's an interesting one.
Interesting. If they had come out with the daisy wheel, that they would have had a whole nother keyboard. Are you familiar with the daisy wheel?
No.
It's a round circle about the size of a golf ball that has letters all the way around it, kind of like you see the Wikipedia icon. You know, I think they've got an image of that sort of thing. But every letter of the alphabet's all around this chrome ball, and when you press a character, that letter hits the ribbon, which puts the letter on the paper. And so the ball just changes positions every time you press a character. And they called it a daisy wheel. Radio Shack, I think it was, or Tandy Corporation might have been the first on the scene with that.
Interesting.
But at that point, it doesn't matter because none of them come together. The wheel. But that's not a mechanical application. There is a digital instruction that tells that wheel which way to turn. Might be able to have done manually if somebody thought about it. I don't know.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to open up the shop. If you have any other questions, again, feel free to leave them down there. We can always answer those questions on the next episode, or feel free to email us with your questions or ideas of things that you want us to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and we appreciate your business.
Take care.
Have a wonderful Saturday.